All right. Hi guys, how you doing? It's the last week of school, well, at least of assignments, and I'm excited about that for you. You guys have done really well. I've been very impressed about how many of you guys have been able to stay on top of online work and how many of you guys have been able to show me that you have been able to put the work in and actually learn the content. So good job. Keep it up. Those of you that are behind, it's okay. You still have time to catch up. Catch up now. So we're just going to review a couple of things that you've been learning these last couple of weeks and tie it all together. So you started a couple weeks ago learning about the carbon cycle, and if you remember that, we talked about how there's different ways that carbon gets into the atmosphere. And before humans were here, and before we had all these machines that were pumping carbon into the atmosphere, really the only way that carbon got back into the atmosphere was when it was released from when there were animals that were dying, but the biggest way was like through volcanoes erupting, or through gases being emitted from the earth like that, like in Yellowstone. Otherwise, there wasn't a ton of carbon that was being released in the atmosphere, and now there is a ton. And it's really putting our planet out of whack. So you learned about that. Then you learned about what natural resources are. You learned that natural resources are these limited things that we are using, and they're going to run out eventually. And you can find them all over the world, but they're distributed unevenly, right? You did that assignment where you looked at the map and you could see that you can get oil in some places and not in other places, and you can get coal in some places, not in other places. And all of these things depend upon geological processes that happened way back in the past in order to have these resources there. So these are not things that can just be immediately reproduced. They're millions of years old. It takes a long time for these things to get into the earth in the first place, and we're just digging them up and using them. That being said, none of them are going to run out like tomorrow. Most of them, like coal, for example, we have 150 to 200 more years that we could continue to use coal at the rate that we're using without running out. And that's just based on the reserves that we currently know we have. There's more possibly that we haven't found yet. So it's not a dire situation, but it's something that we should be aware of. And talking about climate change and carbon being emitted into the air, we want to move away from using things such as coal so we can have cleaner air. Going on, you guys then took a quiz, right? You went on to that website and you took a quiz to find out how many planet Earths everybody in the world would need if they all lived like you and they used all the resources that you do. That being said, so I gave you guys the quiz, you guys took it. I took your answers and I put them into a graph. Okay, so that was the graph you saw. And you could see that some people were all the way up and needed 9 planet Earths if everybody lived like them. The most people were in like the 2 to 3 planet Earth range, and some people were down to 1 to 1.9. That being said, this quiz was not perfect. It's not exactly accurate. I got 1.9 Earths. And I live in an apartment, and I take the train to school a lot and ride my bike a lot, and it's not perfect. But the whole point of it was to get you to think about how many resources are you using? What is your carbon footprint? What is your effect on the planet right now? And to think about what could you do to change that and make your carbon footprint smaller. Okay, so some of the suggestions that students gave were you could recycle more, you could bike more and drive less, you could turn off your lights in your bedrooms when your parents ask you, you could turn off the water more, don't waste water as much. You could use reusable things like water bottles. You don't need to use a plastic water bottle every day and throw it away. If you're a person that likes water bottles, then buy a physical water bottle and just clean it out so you're not wasting the plastic water bottles. Some other suggestions that I wanted to point out is you could also look for things like there's this place called ecosia.org. And what it is it's like Google. It's a search engine, but all the money that they make from ads and things from you being on there and searching on there goes towards planting trees instead of whatever Google is using their money for. So that's cool. Just being informed and keeping up on what is happening with climate change and what is happening with global warming and what's happening with the people that are trying to change the world and make it better. Support those people. For example, back a little while ago, the Amazon forest was on fire, and there's a lot of social media people that were trying to get support and help to stop that from happening. So you could support those people. Overall, the point of this was just for you to be conscious of your effect on the environment. You could make a pact right now to bike more. All of us could bike to work, my work, your school. You could bike to school next year. What if all of us started biking and walking and there was no cars driving kids to school anymore? That would lower the carbon emissions that our school is putting out by a lot if we don't have those cars idling in the parking lot every day. Or you could recycle more. For example, my husband, when he was young, he was 12, 13, he got really into recycling, and he changed his family, the way that they recycle. They ended up actually having to get another recycling can because they were recycling so often. You could be that change for your family. Another point is that right now you live under your family's roof and they make a lot of the choices for you. So that quiz was really about their choices, really. And you, now that you've taken that quiz, can think about how do you want your life to be maybe a little different so you can use less resources. But you can make a change. Choose to make that change. Recycle more, bike more, whatever you think is going to help the planet the best in your situation. After that, you guys researched one natural resource, and that was just to give you a little bit more of a reference by looking at one specifically. What else should we talk about? So one of the biggest problems with natural resources is that we are using a lot. Developed countries are using a lot. Then we have these poorer countries that are not as developed, and they're looking to us as an example and saying, we want to get there. And to get there, they have to burn and use a whole bunch of natural resources. So what our job is now as a country and a nation and other developed countries, we need to be, which it's happening a little bit, is stepping into these countries that are developing and giving them clean energy options so that they don't have to go through the stage that we're in and they can just jump right to the clean energy. But it's a big project, and it's a big thing that's going to take a lot of time and a lot of work. So let's talk about clean energy for just a second, okay? Right now, a lot of places around the world that have electricity, it is used or produced by coal, which is what you guys are on, or being, the reason why you have electricity in South Jordan is because of coal. A coal plant that's being used up, okay? But there's other ways to get electricity and energy. Some of these are good. They all have some side effects though. You've got wind energy, okay? So like those huge windmills that you see down in American Fork and Spanish Fork. So those produce free electricity, but there's problems too because those are very dangerous actually. If you've ever looked up videos of them exploding, those windmills, if they get going too fast, then they'll explode, and those windmill arms are huge. They also kill a lot of birds, and they also are ugly and take up a lot of room, I think. But they're not giving a whole bunch of carbon emissions into the air, so that's better for that. You also have hydro, which is like dams in the water. Okay, so you dam up this water, then the water has to come through and it turns a windmill kind of a thing inside, and then that produces energy. So that's good, but there's also some bad things because you've disrupted this ecosystem because you've closed off this section of the river from this section of the river. That affects a lot of animals. Also, you have all of this sludge and things that start building up on that side of the dam, and that can release things like methane into the air, which is another greenhouse gas. So there's some bad things with that too. Solar energy. You've probably seen solar panels. Maybe some of you guys have solar panels on your house. Solar panels are a good way to go if you're able to afford them, and also but also they're not super efficient yet. They're way more efficient than they were when they started, but they still are not running up to what would be worth it. And you need a lot of solar panels in order to produce enough energy to run a whole city. You also have nuclear. Nuclear, in my opinion, is probably our most promising solution right now, but that is because of new innovations in it. If you are interested in learning more about nuclear innovations, I would suggest highly to watch this documentary about the Bill Gates Foundation on Netflix. It's called Bill Gates something or other, but it's a documentary about him and what they are doing to help push forward nuclear energy. And it's amazing, and it sounds like it could really help the energy crisis we're in. Okay, so this all comes down to climate change, right? The last assignment you learned about climate change. You looked at evidence that was given by scientists to back up the claim that the climate is changing, that it's warming, and it's caused by us and by CO2 in the air. And this is a controversial topic. A lot of the reason why it is because there's extremists on both sides. And it's very political, so a lot of people are using it to their political advantage, which other people don't like. And also, it's hard to take the blame, to say that we are affecting our planet in that way. Something that was really interesting on that website that you looked at from NASA, I hope that on the evidence website that you were able to look at the ice pictures. If not, I would suggest going back. Underneath the one where it says polar ice caps are melting or glaciers are melting, if you click on the plus more button, there's this map that it takes you to, and you can click on glaciers around the world, and they have pictures that were taken of that glacier back in the 1900s by humans that were just exploring, and then a picture of the glacier today, and it's all of them are much smaller and much different, and it's very clear evidence that these glaciers are melting all around the world, and there's no other clear reason or why that's happening besides that the climate overall must be warming. Now, all of this is kind of negative and heavy for us to think about. When I was a student going to college, there was a lot of negative feelings for me. I had a hard time because I learned so much about climate change and all the horrible things that we were doing to the planet. And it made me feel like there's no way that we can fix this. But really, there are a lot of good things that are happening. So let's talk about some of the good things, okay? We are making progress. So for example, right now we are burning coal a lot still to make energy, but that process of burning coal has been changed and innovated to the point that there's a lot less of carbon being emitted with each the amount of coal that we're using. So basically it's become more efficient. Also, there's a lot of other innovations like electrical cars and things that will be very helpful when we figure out how to make cleaner batteries that don't use a ton of resources, and also when we figure out how to get off coal and use other cleaner energies. You also, I don't know if you've heard about, but there's a whole bunch of garbage in the ocean, different masses of garbage that accumulate because of the currents of the ocean. They all come to different points. And until recently, there wasn't really anything being done about it. We knew they were there, but there's this group that have started they made this machine that's able to collect the garbage in the ocean and put it into this boat and bring it back. And they're going to cycle through it and figure out what they can recycle and what needs to be put into good places to be disposed of. So that's cool. There's a lot of young people that are getting really passionate about climate change, and they're making a big difference. I don't know if you've heard about like the Paris Climate Accord, or these big countries come together and have been committing to each other that by 2050 they're going to have cleaner energy, that they're going to be off of coal, and that they're going to make the planet better. And a lot of that, young people are getting involved in saying, yeah, we deserve to have a cleaner climate, and it really is going to take all of us coming together to make that happen. Also, the government is investing in new innovations all the time. There's this website that I was looking at that had all of these things that you could apply for to try and get grants to make like new clean energy, to make new ways to recycle, things like that. Overall, we can do this if we all work together. So we all need to decide, what are we going to do individually right now to be better people for this climate and to help the earth to be healthier. I personally am committing to ride my bicycle more. So I live close to my parents, both my parents and my husband's parents, and we drive over there, which is ridiculous. It's only like a 5-minute bike ride, 5 to 10 minute bike ride. So this summer, now that it's warm, we are committing to bike over there as often as we can. Sometimes it's not possible. Sometimes you have to bring a whole bunch of stuff or things like that, and you need a car. Sometimes your parents say, no, you can't bike, we are driving, right? But you could bike to your friend's house. You could encourage your friends to bike more. Recycle more. I'm committed to recycle. I love recycling. It feels so good to, instead of putting that plastic bottle in the trash, putting it into the recycling bin. That's just a small thing you can do to help. Last thing I wanted to say about this topic is there's another show on Netflix called Our Planet, and I highly recommend watching it. It's very good. And it's kind of on this topic and about how climate change is affecting animals and ecosystems around the world. I want to end the video by just saying thank you so much for being great first year students for me. This is my first year teaching, and I was really nervous and worried that I wouldn't like it. And you guys have been amazing, and I have really enjoyed getting to know you and really enjoyed teaching science. And I love science, and I love your curiosity that I've been able to see, and the way that you've been able to develop as students and as scientists, and the way you've been able to develop your own opinions and finding your own knowledge. So thank you so much. I'm so grateful for you guys, and I hope that you have a great summer and a great rest of your year, and hopefully next year when you come back, you'll come stop by my room and say hi, because I will be there again next year. So thank you so much.